Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, a show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today we have a special show for you. As you can see, we've got 3 guests. I'm joined by Paul Ashcroft, Simon Brown, and Garrick Jones, who are the authors of the best-selling book, The Curious Advantage. Welcome, everyone. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Twice in one week, Simon.
I know, you're working me hard, Chris.
Fantastic. Before we jump in, just each of you give everyone just a quick overview of sort of your background, experience to where we are today. We'll start with yourself, Simon.
Yeah, so Simon Brown, 20 plus years in the learning world, last 7 years at Novartis, where I'm Chief Learning Officer.
Hi, I'm Paul Ashcroft, co-founder of Ludic Group. Ludic works all around the world, helping organizations make the shift to digital.
Garrick, last but not least.
Well, I'm the other co-founder of Ludic with Paul, and we work with everybody around the world, but I'm also a composer and a musician and write a lot of music and things.
Amazing. First and foremost, how did you all meet?
So about 7 years ago, so it was just after I joined Novartis. I joined in a role to look at our sales and marketing training globally, and we ran a visioning workshop to bring lots of people together, and I needed help in doing that. And Paul and Garrick came in to help sort of structure the ideas and come up with some of the visual things, which you may have seen on LinkedIn, some of our visual scribes. They brought some of those artists, and we came up with the vision around a capability building academy. So that was the start of our working relationship, but also our friendship.
Yeah. So you're not fed up with each other yet then? You've survived this long.
7 years time, really, gosh.
7 years. Yeah.
When did the idea for the book first become conceived?
Well, we wanted to tell the story of how organizations have put curiosity at the center of how they're making that shift into digital. The curiosity is something everybody has. As we talk about it, people become intrigued even by the idea of curiosity, but not everybody knows how to use it. So we became really fascinated about how people and their organizations can become more successfully curious.
We were talking a lot, Simon, Paul, and myself, about all the work that Simon was doing, and we were working with him on learning, and thought we might be writing a book about learning. But then as we progressed through that process, hey, Simon, it turned into a book about curiosity, because we found that was the main theme that wove it all together.
Yeah, it was a fateful dinner. So I'd had 2 people say to me in the space of a week, completely independently, it's like, you should write a book about what you're doing at Novartis. And Paul and Garrick had written a book before, and so we were having dinner, and it was like, tell me about the experience of writing a book. And we decided, let's do it together. And it evolved from an original concept into something I think so much richer. And it's a great argument for diversity of thought that if it had been, I probably would never have finished it if it had been just me either. We wouldn't be having this conversation now. But the diversity of thought across the 3 of us, I think, has brought a very different slant and a much stronger slant to what it would have otherwise been. So.
Does it make it more difficult when there's 3 of you writing one book, or easier?
It depends on your process, actually. And we have a very nice process using tools like Evernote. And we also started with a really fuzzy idea of like all the data we could think of in all the areas, putting them together, and went through sort of iterative cycles of clustering, allowing the themes to emerge. And then we put a very bad version together, printed that out, and then started the editing process, which of course brings in more research as we went through.
Oh, is that the original?
One of the early versions with scribbles all over it. And,
is that common practice in writing a book to do something?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's a process that comes out of our work on decision making and all the fuzzy logic it's associated with, it's also very similar to a composition process that we use in music and for productions and stuff. So that kind of translated into the Evernote process, and it's like sharpening a pencil. Things become clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer as you move through it.
Yeah,
we had weekly check-ins as well between us, and those weekly check-ins sort of certainly kept me motivated. Of I'd do this bit by the next week, and it's sort of that almost social contract between us that created the motivation to actually do it. So.
Yeah, how long did it take?
It's actually amazing. It took a year, and that is fast. I mean, we started probably July with concept. by October, we had a first sort of clustering of research. And by November, we had a bad manuscript. So it was good, very good.
Yeah. For everyone listening, how do you define curiosity?
I think for us, curiosity is really about wondering, but putting that wonder into action. It's not just asking what if or thinking about that might be nice. It's really about having a go and giving it a try and getting involved and learning by doing. We think curiosity is about exploration fundamentally. And we think you could sum it up a little bit like it's an attitude of wonder while cultivating a spirit of adventure. It's that idea of having an attitude of wonder and then being brave enough to cultivate that adventurous spirit and go for it.
I feel like that's now more important than ever, given the current events, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk all about the impact of digital, and we can talk about that in more detail, because now everyone's faced with, an infinite amount of information when the internet and digital. The question, of course, is what do you do with that, and how do you navigate that, and how do you make that useful and use it in a powerful way? And we think that there are huge components around curiosity that allows you to make sense of the digital age.
And the world's changing so fast. There's no clear right answer anymore. You can't, if you take the way it was done before, that's no longer the way of the future. So being curious about what are the different ways that you can do this, and then putting that curiosity into action through experimentation, gives you a way to navigate in the ambiguity and the rapid change that we're seeing.
I feel like that's one of the reasons why we came through. As I said when we spoke yesterday, Simon, is that my co-founder Shane always has a go at me because he's, Chris, you're always looking at these other things outside of our business. I'm always looking at new innovations, new products, new technology. I'm obsessed with these new things. And when COVID hit, I felt like we were so much more prepared because we had our hands in so many different areas and we're always learning. So we already knew how to move to our face-to-face workshops and events online because we'd already been dabbling in that space and we had the skill sets internally to be able to do so. So it's quite an easy pivot for us because we always remain curious about doing that. And that kind of feels like that's part of the DNA of the team. There's always every one of us are always working on a little side hustle project in our teams. And I've always encouraged that with everyone, even when it fails. I'm like, don't worry, because it means I want you to continue to come to me, even when it seems crazy. Just keep going. And I'll be honest, that wasn't even, I think it was unintentional. It was just I did it. So it seems the team just kind of followed that, and they're like, well, Chris does it all the time. He's coming to us with these crazy ideas. So every time we have our Monday morning meeting, I always ask the team, what are some of the new discoveries or things that you've come across? Just bring them in, even if they're not even relating to our current projects and what we're doing. And some of our best innovations have come from both.
It's so powerful that, I mean, we've had a similar experience in as much as we've always wanted to employ a diverse group of people as much as possible. And the digital world allow us, to employ single mothers, people in slightly different circumstances, people who are older and that. And we've also really encouraged people. We've got people on our team who are opera singers and are still professionally, opera singers, but they're also professional consultants alongside us. And that kind of diversity just keeps things popping all the time.
Mm-hmm. We got a podcast that goes with the book, and we had a conversation with Chris Meyer, futurologist, the other day, and he was giving the example of curiosity of ants and a Big Mac. So he was saying, if you imagine an anthill and a Big Mac as the food source, and the ants go to the Big Mac and they keep going back, and then one day it rains and the Big Mac washes away. And you need to then be curious to go off and find that next source. But if you're not curious, you keep going back to where the Big Mac was and you find nothing's there, and you come back and you keep going back. And it's the curiosity that takes you off in spirals to where's the next food source. And ideally, that curiosity is going on all the time. So before the food source, the Big Mac washes away, you've already found your next source of food. It's quite a nice story to make curiosity real.
I love the fact his go-to was Big Mac. When he was thinking,
absolutely.
When he was thinking about that, what piece of food? Big Mac. Everyone.
He was talking about the history of all time, from the Big Bang to the Big Mac.
Oh, that's hilarious. Why is curiosity so important in organizations? I know it's part of your values, right, Simon, at Novartis. Why have you put that as part of the heart of the business in terms of your sort of why, your purpose statement, your values?
At the heart of being a pharmaceutical medicines company, we need to be innovating. We need to be discovering new ways to help patients around the world and improve and enhance their lives. So we need to have that constant innovation, and behind that constant innovation is that curiosity. And so we've set a culture, or we are working on a culture journey towards being inspired, curious, and unbossed. So if we have people who are inspired around a greater purpose with the energy to be able to fulfill that, if they're curious to ask questions and to be constantly learning, and if they're unbossed, where they're working with psychological safety and an environment where the manager is there to bring out the best from the team and recognizes the answer is usually in the team, then those things will actually make us successful. So curiosity fits into that broader culture journey around inspired, curious, and unbossed. And we're now 2 years into that journey, seeing very positive momentum. I mean, if we look at some of the metrics, we've seen engagement scores considerably increasing over that time. We've seen satisfaction around learning going up over that time. And we've seen performance increasing. We had our probably arguably best year ever last year as a company. So
Sure, it probably helps when you have you've got a CEO that's fully behind you, right? I've seen the episode. With your CEO.
Absolutely,
and
no, very fortunate. Yep.
Yeah, and two, you have the ROI. You can measure curiosity, and here's the data.
Well, we're working to measure it. I think we have a lot of measures. I wouldn't go as far as saying we have an absolute, here is how you measure it, but we were certainly working towards it. Yeah.
That's right. It's definitely it's on the research program. We know how to measure innovation and its impact on the organization, and now we're just trying to extend that to curiosity and its impact on value specifically.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions that we went into yesterday, Simon, which I want to bring up again, is: can you learn to be more curious?
I could pick this one up. I mean, we think curiosity is like a muscle that you have to work, or you have to keep training. It's when we ask people, they say, "Oh yeah, I'm really curious." But then we say, well, what have you done with that? And they say, well, actually, I haven't really done very much with it. I kind of wondered, what would it be like to travel? Should I learn a new language? Could I change jobs? But they're still in the same job and still speaking the same language. And it's about putting it into action every day. And I think, and we found this in our research, actually, they're just some good ingredients or things you can do to be more successfully curious. One of which I think we were talking about earlier is about community. Connecting with other people, building a diverse set of people around you. Maybe it's about curating all of the information, and so you start to focus. And then it's just about trying, getting on and doing it, seeing what works. Chris, as you said in your company, allow people to get on with it, allow them to fail, try again, and see what comes next.
I think there's no doubt that curiosity can be learned. There's no doubt that we can teach our kids to be more curious and to be safe, and give them the skills and tools that allow them to really explore the world and feel that the world is their oyster. And, as Paul was saying, sometimes we forget how to do that as adults because we're framed by our experience, or we're framed by the work or whatever, but yet there is huge advantage to, slowing down in order to speed up. Curiosity is something that we can really put into practice on a daily basis, and also it makes our lives more fun and more joyful. I mean, we can talk about the impact of what happens in our brains when we're curious, but it certainly is linked to endorphins, and it's linked to that kind of feeling of happiness we get when we're starting to explore things.
And to build on that, I mean, we come up with a model in the book called the 7 C's, or Sailing the 7 C's of Curiosity. And as you go through those C's, the final one is around confidence. So as you go through being curious, we found that builds your confidence. And actually that then takes you back to the start of the model, that the more confident you are, the more then you can be curious and try out and be creative to try other things, which in turn builds further confidence. So once you get started in being curious, that can perpetuate in a sort of virtuous circle to actually build your curiosity even further.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear more about how it affects the brain, Garrick, because my friends always say to me, Chris, you're really annoying because you're good at everything, but you get to a certain level and you get bored and leave. So for me, the drug and the addiction is being really bad at something, getting really good at it, but when I get really good at it, I get bored.
Well,
and I'm off to the next thing again. So one of my employees for Secret Santa actually bought me a book that says how to be good at everything, because you're really annoying. And I do explain to people, like, the buzz I get out of being terrible at it and getting good at it is like an addiction.
Yeah.
I feel addicted to, and I'm like, what's next? I'm good at that now. Forget about that. What else can I get good at? And then is there something happening in my brain, a chemical balance? What's going on in there?
There's a lot going on there. I I relate to that a lot, because I remember it was about the third time that somebody broke up with me when I was much younger. The thing they said when they broke up was like, you know everything, you know too much, or you and know it all. And it was after that became a continuous process in my life that I started to reevaluate and think, maybe it's not about trying to be the person who knows everything. Maybe it's about or presenting yourself like that. Maybe there's something else to it. And I sort of have had to learn the hard way to really be open and to understand that it's okay to be wrong, or it's okay not to know. Because I was one of those kids who could play the piano and speak and do things, and I was had all that stuff going on for me, which is both a good thing and sometimes gets in the way. The thing about the hormones that the brain secretes is all about curiosity and wonder and exploration. The moment you try and ask questions and start to do things, you have physical reactions in the body. I think of the brain as an extension throughout the entire body, through our nervous system. And what happens is the brain secretes the famous flight or fight endorphins and hormones. And in order to learn new things, for example, you can learn completely new context. That is, you might be laying down pathways or learning things you've never been exposed to before. You have to react to that. And what our brain and our body does is it goes into a sort of an advanced state of precaution. And because it's something new and it doesn't know whether it's dangerous or we're going to be safe, and we don't know whether we're going to come out on the other side. But it's a heightened awareness. And that heightened awareness is accompanied when, as Paul and Simon were talking about confidence, once you start moving to a point where the other pathways are being laid down and hormones are being released that are about confidence, you move to a different place where learning starts to be encoded in the body. So pathways are laid down, neural pathways are laid down through a process of wonder, and then a process of confidence has an impact of releasing endorphins and hormones that make it stick. So curiosity, wonder, confidence, feeling safe has a direct impact on the physical neurological status of the brain. Mm-hmm. And we also think, and there's some research to indicate that it has an impact on people with Alzheimer's, that the more curious you are younger, and if you keep people stimulated and you keep people asking questions and you keep them open to new ideas, the brain continues to release hormones like dopamine, for example, which keep Alzheimer's at bay, and so on. So there may even be a long-term health benefit for being curious.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen some research about learning new languages and the effect that it has on Alzheimer's, building that pathways and keeping your brain active as well.
Yes.
Does it work? Sorry, 1 second. Does it work in opposite effect though? The people lay down pathways that have a negative experience of learning, and then that can compound. Would you think it will work the same way? Because I have certain friends that had a terrible experience with perhaps school or work from a learning perspective that have a very negative approach to it. They don't want to take risk and they get anxious, and it's like compounding the other direction.
It's all learning though, whether it's negative or positive, it's all learning. The brain doesn't distinguish between a positive or a negative, doesn't make a judgment in that way. Okay. It's still laying down learning. And if your learning is to become unsafe and risk averse and continually risk averse, you're simply following those pathways. So one of the reasons, I know Paul wants to make a point, but one of the reasons we talk about critical bias and unconscious bias and criticality in our book, and it's really important, for me personally, as well as the other guys, about the fact that if we become aware of our unconscious bias and the things that the ideas that are formed already, that's the thing that opens us up to new experiences. Because if we are biased about something, it might take us down a pathway where we feel only comfortable and only safe, or perhaps we're only exploring pleasure. And yet that's not going to teach us new things. By being aware that, hang on, maybe the tension I'm experiencing here relates to my bias against a situation, or my bias against a person, for example, or whatever. that being aware of our unconscious bias allows us to remain open and keep open. Understand that all learning is fundamentally difficult. All learning fundamentally triggers a state within us that is about slight fear and unease. And it's when you get used to that being uneasy that you really start to learn.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that one of the things that we really liked when we were finding out about curiosity, and I've been trying to tell my kids this now, having done 3 months of lockdown homeschooling, is that if you approach something with a curious mind, no matter how dull it is, you will learn quicker, you will learn better, you'll retain more information. So simply the act of approaching something by being curious improves your learning. I think, Simon, you've seen some evidence of this as well.
Yeah, so we cite this in the book. So there's an example from Harvard Business Review from, I think it's Eric Anderson, who talks about someone that she was aware of who was a lawyer who had to learn a new area of legal knowledge that was the dullest area that they could think of, and they had to move into this area and learn this whole wealth of information. And through reframing that in a mode of curiosity of, okay, what is it about this that hundreds and thousands of lawyers find interesting and make their career? What is it about this that will actually help me to achieve these things? By adding that lens of curiosity, that created the motivation to then go on and dive into this content that previously there'd been a big barrier. And there's other research as well to sort of say, if you apply that curious lens, actually, you learn better.
I have to say, my kids haven't bought it yet. Still trying to persuade them.
Yeah, I love your point earlier about, I always say to teams, seek discomfort. Is that when I feel most uncomfortable with it, I know that's where the progress happens. And I was quite lucky that was embedded in me from a kid because I played sports. So I knew I was going to be terrible at ice hockey when I first started playing. I knew I was going to be terrible at, all of the tennis, but a lot of sports that we played. Myself and Shane, when we both played competitively for, GB ice hockey team, and we fell on our face a million times and we lost games. So we experienced a lot of failure. But we understood that was the path to success, and that was okay. Carry on. So when we got into business, we didn't realize how powerful that would be for us. Where everyone else, we had a sort of a cohort of 20 graduates that came into this job, and I think about 5 of us survived because everyone else was saying, "Oh my God, that person said no." It's just sales, by the way, B2B sales floor, pretty tough. Sort of like just sink or swim type environment. And we were like, this is fine. We were wondering why everyone around us was saying, this is so hard. Someone said no. And we were like, what do you mean? Of course they said no. You've done one call. and we didn't get it. And we were very successful in that environment because we understood that being uncomfortable was just the path to success for us.
It's what I mean, just to pick up on that, Chris, because I love that story. And one of the things that I liked about the research that we found around confidence is that you talked about, okay to fail. We fell on our face. It looks like you didn't fall on your face too hard, right? But when you're learning something new, like the guys that are learning to rock climb, the crazy guys that will climb up a sheer face of a rock. It's not the sort of thing you wake up on a Sunday morning and think, I'm going to go climb up the top of that 100-meter rock face. The way they do it is they climb up a little bit and then deliberately allow themselves to fall. Climb up a little bit more and deliberately allow themselves to fall. So the way you build up confidence that we found and learned about is that it's not just about knowing you can do it well and get it right. It's knowing you can cope when you get it wrong and allowing yourself to do those incremental failures, like fall on your face, try a bigger game, miss that goal, whatever it is, but do it in a safe way that doesn't completely knock you off. So you're never prepared to do it again. If you can get that balance right, that's what really starts to accelerate your confidence. And that's what builds your curiosity as well.
And to be able to get those failures, you then need the safe environment, the psychological safety where those failures can be accepted. Because moving that to a business environment, if the first time you fall off the rock face, you die, then so the first time you fail in an organization, you're penalized for it or you're out, you won't be able to learn from that and have that experience that Paul described. So I think that's where the whole piece around creating the psychological safety where people can try things, can experiment, can learn from that failure is crucial. Otherwise, the whole thing just doesn't work and you won't get that curiosity. We had some interesting research where we looked at the difference between a manager that someone would rate as favorable and a manager that they would rate as unfavorable. And we did this at scale across the organization, looking at the results of one of our engagement surveys. And what we saw was the difference in curiosity of someone who's had a favorable manager or an unfavorable manager was the highest impact across any of the behavioral metrics. And we saw a 22-point difference between a favorable manager and an unfavorable manager.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact name of the company, but when I had my last show yesterday with Chastel and Dave Orrick, they were mentioning a company that at the end of their sort of sales, end of their year sort of company retreat, they actually they asked each leader to take along 5 employees that over-exceeded and then take 5 employees that failed, but to celebrate them on stage. So to take, these people did incredibly well and use 5, well done, and treated them in the same manner. To show everyone that even though you failed, we're gonna celebrate that in front of the whole organization, and I thought that was pretty incredible. Because there's one thing
we had that.
You need to demonstrate it as an organization.
We had that last year in our HR awards. We had an award that was for I can't remember the exact words, but it was essentially the greatest moment of learning, which was essentially the greatest thing that didn't go as planned that we were able to learn from. So that same principle, yeah.
It's like we like to say you want high volume failure with high volume, low impact failure rather than high impact, low volume failure. You don't want the one mistake that breaks the bank.
Yeah.
What you want is thousands of little failures that actually allow you to target, pretty much like a missile gets to its target. Missiles move all over the place while they're triangulating to get where they want to go. It's wrong, 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 it's right. And it's that idea of like high volume, low impact failure that allows sort of this amorphous cloud of networked organizations to kind of get where they want to go these days.
Mm-hmm. There was a great discussion with Josh Burson that we had on the podcast with him because he did the foreword for the book where we talked about failure. Actually, failure often isn't failure. If we reframe failure as actually we learned a way that didn't work, it's a very different way of looking at it. That we tried 3 things, 2 of them didn't go as planned, but we can take this learnings from them. One was but it's not failures. It's just we learned these ways didn't work.
Yeah. It's interesting trying to reframe that for years. It's taken me quite a long time to see the word failure itself as a positive.
Yeah.
Especially in school where I failed at all of my exams. And all of a sudden, it was a very negative experience for me. And now it's like failure is great. What did I learn from it?
Look where you are now. Exactly. It's where it gets you. I bet you even failure at work was teaching you things, teaching you things perhaps you didn't like, teaching you where you didn't want to be. Exactly. It's all learning.
What other things stop people from being curious? You mentioned psychological safety, which I'm sure is one, of course. Are there any other things that stop us from becoming curious?
So there's a model that we talk about in the book from Dr. Diane Hamilton, she's the author of a book, The Curiosity Code, and she's come up with a model called FATE, which stands for fear, assumptions, technology, and environment. And she has a survey that goes with that actually looks at what are your personal barriers to stopping curiosity, and around those 4 elements. So at a personal level, I think something like that is helpful to understand. I think at an organizational level, then some of the things we talked about of fear of failure, is there encouragement for asking questions, is there encouragement for experimentation, is there role modeling from leaders around the things that are being said of continuous learning, of questioning and things. All of those things, if they're not there, would be barriers.
And also criticality. Sometimes we may be afraid of where the answers may lead us, or we might be afraid of what we might learn. And it really is a question of understanding that in every way that if you want to be curious or ask a question or go somewhere, it's going to take, you're going to need courage, and you're going to need to be able to face things, whether it's dealing with data sets in an organization or it's dealing with something you personally want to learn. It's always going to take courage. And as you said, go to the failure, go to that point where you need to be courageous and you're uncomfortable.
One thing I'd add to that is that if we went around and asked people, we asked, what do you understand by curiosity? And people say, it's asking why, it's wondering what if. They might tell us curiosity killed the cat because curiosity is a bad thing. But if you ask them, how are you going to be curious? How are you being curious? We're not sure that many people have a really great answer to that. or even if they could articulate how they're being curious. And I think that's what we've been trying to describe in the book around. There's actually some really practical things you can do. You can how you explore, how you put people around you, how you curate your information,
and that makes me think
how you build together. How you build things together to figure it out. So it's not just about try, fail, get a bit better. There's actually just some other really practical things. There's a framework you can use.
Yeah, and Paul talks about people. It reminded me some people aren't curious, or they stop from being curious because they don't know where to start. And the simplest way of where do I start if I'm curious is to ask another human being. I mean, yes, you can Google, but we talk about community a lot in the book because say, I want to learn, I'm a musician. I want to learn about jazz. Jazz has a huge history and it's got a lot of theory and there's lots of things but you go and find a jazz musician and you start to speak with them. They're going to take you into the world of jazz. And the most powerful technique, if you have any question or you want to learn something, is go and ask another human being.
So question for Garrick. You mentioned that you can measure innovation, but not curiosity, not yet, shall I say. He said, I imagine that's because there's a clear definition of innovation. How do you define curiosity to make it measurable?
It's a tough question, but it's a great question, and it's exactly where the research is at the moment. Because measuring innovation and the value of innovation, well, we've been focused on that for about the last 25 years, and there's some great work that's been done on what are the impact of innovation and how can you define where innovation is to be found, and all the way through from ideas making creativity all the way through to something being launched into the market. So we know what those variables are. When it comes to being curious, curiosity is a personal trait and it's a behavioral trait, but it also has an impact at a cultural level within an organization. So you might say it's a little softer, perhaps, and I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean, it's a little bit more difficult to kind of figure out what are the elements that we need to measure that will tell us that curiosity is present. But some work has been gone down the way of understanding that things like measuring failure, measuring prototypes, understanding how much learning is going on in the organization. Simon's organization require people to do or offer people to do 100 hours a year. IBM is another great organization, as well as Microsoft, which are setting up contexts and technical contexts for enabling people to be curious in the workplace. And with that infrastructure in place, you start to be able to say, okay, lots of people have been doing learning outside of their specific area. Lots of people are doing X amount of learning, so clearly they are curious. Lots of people have been doing prototypes and wireframes and failure. So we're starting to understand there's a taxonomy, if you want, of what those variables will be. But we're not there yet. It's early days.
Mm-hmm. What have you all learned personally? You've been on this big journey experience together, right, over the last year, longer than that it seems. What have you learned through your research? How has it affected your own curiosity personally through this and the way you look at the world?
I think for me, it's opened up how much I don't know. So it's sort of you dive into it and you sort of see this whole world open up around you to be curious about. So I think for every piece where we dive into it and think, okay, I've got a bit more of an understanding around it, but you then find 10 things where you can take it further that there's still more room to be curious about. So I think it helped to show me how much I don't know at the moment.
I think for me, Chris, it would be that I took it away that it's nice to know that curiosity is something that I can get better at. And so when I speak to other people and they say, I'd really like to do this, and I say, well, have you done it? Why haven't you done it yet? Oh, well, we've no time, don't know where to start, I don't know who to talk to. So, well, maybe try this, maybe you could try that. And it's something that you think, well, actually, just like getting fitter by going working out, it is something you can improve on and then put that into good use in your life.
Yeah. And for me, I really think it's about connecting to other people, because the way my brain, or I've been trained over the years, sort of was taking me down an area of a lot of academic research and a lot of figuring out, okay, so this is the way the world is. And then once I had an opinion, that would be the way the world was. And what the curiosity stuff has really started getting me to open up and think about things are much broader than I might understand, number one, but number two, it connects me to other people who may know way more than I do about a specific thing. And I think I've become much more open to that and much more relaxed about not being right, I think.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, I'm conscious of time. I'm going to let you guys go. I feel like I'm going to make you read the entire book on the show. But I appreciate joining. Before we wrap up, if there's sort of one parting piece of advice for everyone, what would that be? And where's the best place for everyone to connect with you all? I'll start with yourself, Simon.
Yeah, so I guess experiment, stay curious. Look for where you can be curious. And in terms of one place to go, I guess check out our website, which is curiousadvantage.com. You can get the book from there. You can get access to the podcasts from there. The book's also on a summer sale at the moment. So if you want the digital version, it's at a reduced price at the moment as well. So get it before we change that back.
If I had one thing to say or leave people with is ask big questions and challenge yourself. Ask yourself to ask the questions and be curious about the things that you're always slightly afraid of, and go there. And if you want to get a hold of me and my fellow authors, LinkedIn is a great place to connect with us.
Fantastic. And podcasts, is it iTunes, Google Play, all the normal places?
It's everywhere. You name it. Audio Boom, Spotify, Deezer, Apple. It's everywhere. It's called The Curious Advantage. The Curious Advantage podcast.
Make sure everyone listening, make sure you go and subscribe. You will not regret it. There's some incredible guests on there. And if you're like me, you just love listening to podcasts while you're on the move. It's an incredible resource. So I'll grab a copy of the book whilst it's on sale. Thanks again, Simon, Garrick, Paul. It's a pleasure. And I'm super excited to get into the book when I get a copy.
Let's wait for you, Chris.
I'll find you the sale after this.
You want that spot behind you on the shelf after you've read it as well. There. Yeah, that spot there. That spot.
I'll give you front of the plant there. I'm running out slowly but surely. Thanks a lot, guys. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Episode. See you later. Bye.
Take care. Bye.